All right, so this is a lot of sports content this weekend, but whatever. This is right after the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. We all know what the standings are. We all know that Max Verstappen is going to win. So what I want to do is a different type of top 20. I'm not going to put in Oliver Bierman in this or Behrman because he's only going to be in one race. What I want to do is rank the most I want to rank the drivers by likability, from most likable to who is the least likable driver on the grid. So it was really me ranking least likability, because I think that's just a lot more interesting. So number one, most likable, I think, is Carlos Sainz. He's got the whole smooth operator thing going on. There's no reason to not like him. There's no group of people who don't like him. He now lost his Ferrari seat, so he's now kind of an underdog. So everyone's kind of rooting, like, hey, we hope that Carlos gets another seat. He's won some races. Again, he's just like a cool cat. And then on top of all that, he kind of has had a go of it his career, right? He lost his Renault seat to Daniel Ricciardo. He lost his seat before Renault, and now he's losing his Ferrari seat. Is just wherever he goes, kind of bad stuff happens. Even though he keeps on performing, he's just kind of like not there. So you're rooting for him. He's cool. He's nice. He's kind of the whole package. Second, I think, is Daniel Ricciardo. I think he would be the number one spot, but he's not really at the top of the grid. And Formula One is a game about winners, and he's kind of been a loser the past 4 or 5 years. Like, I think this is kind of, I'm going to refer to this kind of a few times, but I think this is kind of like a problem of Drive to Survive in general. Is that like there is really no memory in people's minds pre 2019, because like Daniel Ricciardo was an amazing driver who put up a lot of numbers before then, but it just so happened that like the first year that people really started to care about F1, he went to Renault, he went to McLaren, he fumbled there. But all that considered, he is a really good driver. There's nobody who really doesn't like him except for maybe McLaren. Number three, so I want to say that like a lot of this is my personal view, but I also like want to give credence to what the general consensus is as well. This is kind of a mix between my view and the consensuses. Personally, I don't like Lewis Hamilton. I'm a Red Bull guy, so obviously there's that. But also, like, the guy like goes around claiming to be the cleanest, nicest driver, but like he ended Alexander Albon's career, and like there's no way you're telling me that those two incidents weren't purposeful. Like, he was getting a podium, he was getting a win. Lewis Hamilton smashed him against the wall in both situations, and then also like I do take Max's stance in that whole controversy, but I don't want to get into all that. So now going down the line, I think the fourth most likable driver is Checo Perez. It's kind of a similar thing to to Carlos Sainz, where like his seat is always kind of in jeopardy. He also had that great run when he was at Racing Point, where he went from last to first, and that got him his seat at Red Bull. And so there's that. There's also like no reason to not like Checo. One problem is he just doesn't have like a personality, so I guess he's not like liked as much as other people. But I think everybody loves Checo. Lando, personally, I don't like Lando that much. Like, if this is just like a straight up, people's position on things, I guess Lando might be higher. But like, I don't know. I just thought he was a little bit too combative against Daniel Ricciardo. He also seems like a little like spoiled to me, a little stupid, a little entitled as well. Like, I actively root against him to get his first race win. I hope he's kind of like the Nico Hulkenberg of race wins and never actually gets his race win. But a lot of people like him, so I can't really put him lower than this. After that, we got Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc, like, he's kind of polarizing in that, like, every single girl loves Charles Leclerc, but because of that, every single guy is like, oh, you like Charles Leclerc. But at the same time, like, Charles Leclerc, like, drives a lot of passion. He, as the red flags pods guys put it, like, he either puts it in the wall or puts it on the podium. It's one or the other. But then also, like, if you actually like look at the Drive to Survive episodes, he's actually like a pretty good teammate. Like, he actually like does like sacrifice for the team a lot of times, and maybe that's like why he's not getting more success. And the fact that like they brought in Lewis to kind of screw with him a little bit, like kind of like irks me a little bit, right? Where like you have all these memes of like Charles being depressed in a Ferrari, where people are kind of laughing at him, but at the same time, like we are kind of being empathetic with them. So Charles, number five is not really that low, or number six, but he's a pretty likable guy. Now there's Max. You know, there are a lot of people who don't like Max for winning, but like they're pretty clear about the fact that they don't like him because he wins. Like, there's no specific problem that people have with Max specifically. Is just the fact that Max keeps on winning. On the other side of that, like Red Bull fans don't really like Max, if that makes sense. Like we love Max because he wins, but nobody's like, I don't really know a lot of Red Bull fans who are like, yeah, man, I'd love to have a beer with Max in the same way that like everyone would love to chill with Carlos or chill with Danny or chill with Lewis or Checo, right? Like these guys seem like a lot of fun. Max, is like hanging out with Max is like, hey, let's go through the F1 simulator, right? So like people just don't really like love Max that much. But yeah, so this is my starting to get likable category. Now to the next category, which is should be unlikable but likable. Now, Fernando Alonso is kind of the opposite of Daniel Ricciardo in this respect because Fernando Alonso had this whole villain mentality about him pre 2019, where like if you read about the history of him, like people really really did not like him. He did a lot of like screwy stuff, but post 2019, he's kind of been like this cuddly Fernando Alonso, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. So he's really been like benefited by the fact that everyone started following F1 starting around 2019, so people like him. Um, Now George Russell. So the reason why I put him in this should be more unlikable but likable is that like George Russell seems like the type of person that you should hate. Like if you actually like think about like if you just like look at George Russell, right? Like he's like this like prim proper Brit. Like he probably has a trust fund. Like he's like if they ever made like Get Out 2, it would probably be at the George Russell family estate. Like that's just who the guy is. Like he looks like this like trust fund cake eater, but like actually like nobody can point to a single bad thing that George Russell has ever done. And he's also like very deferential to Lewis. He's like there's been clips where I've seen where he's been like where like fans are like, hey, we're only here for Lewis, and he's just like, yeah, no, I completely understand, I'm only here for Lewis too. Right? He has this self-deprecating quality that makes him more likable, but like you can't really fight against the fundamentals of how he seems like he's like fundamentally unlikable. Like he seems like the bad guy in any 80s rom-com. You know what I mean? Like the guy that the girl's going to go with, and like the cool scrappy, artiste guy has to stop her from making a terrible mistake. That's like what George Russell is. He just seems like a bad guy, but in actuality he's actually like pretty great. So now we're up to number 11 on my rankings of most unlikable. I call this cuddly but mean, and it's literally just Yuki Tsunoda. Like people like Yuki Tsunoda, like he seems like fun, and like the radio messages are funny. But then you actually like listen to the radio messages, and like the dude is like, if you actually like think about it, like the dude is like yelling at, you know,
let's watch Yuki Tsunoda. Welcome to the world. And Yuki Tsunoda putting on a decent move there, past Esteban Ocon. Let's go. Good Yuki. Yuki.
like I can't find any specifically, but there are a lot where like he's like yelling at the people, like yelling at the race engineer. At the end of the day, like that just kind of like rubs people the wrong way to yell at the race engineer. It's like you're making a lot more money than him. You're the F1 driver. He's like a race engineer. Like stop being so rude to him. So you know, I think you'd be a lot more likable if he wasn't ruder to the people who are trying to help him. But that's where we are. So number 10 on most unlikable. This is my next category, which is we're rooting for these people in theory. We're like Alexander Albon, like I'm rooting for him, like I want him to be successful, but like I'm not that personally invested in him specifically. Like if I look at the standings of a race, I'm like, oh, Albon scored 2 points. That's great. Like that's kind of my reaction. I'm not like thinking like, oh, I hope Albon does better. I'm like, oh, great, Albon did good. So that's I'm rooting for him in theory. So he's number 10. Nico Hulkenberg is number 9, just because he has a lot of baggage, as well. Same thing with Kevin Magnussen. Like, I'm putting these two together because, like, they fought a lot. They have a lot of like bad history with each other. They're kind of like elbows out racers. Where like if you're at the back of the pack, you really shouldn't be that elbows out because like you're not that good. So like, why are you alienating so many people? But yeah, that's my rooting for in theory. 8, 9, 10, Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Albon. People who I kind of hope do better, but like I don't really care that much. Next category, I'm gonna go through pretty quickly. This is my kind of nothing category. Like I just don't think about these people at all. Oscar Piastri, like he's at the front a lot, but like I don't know. I just doesn't really have a personality. Same thing with Logan Sargent. Even Americans don't really like care that much about Logan Sargent because he doesn't win. So like, and Zhou Guan Yu, like, if I showed you a picture of like 10 Chinese people and asked you to point to who is Zhou Guan Yu, do you really think you can do it? Do you really think you could? I'm not sure I could. So that's why he's my kind of nothing. So now we're gonna go to our top four most unlikable drivers. Number four, I this is a little bit of my editorializing, but like Valtteri Bottas for me is number four on most unlikable drivers, and the reason why is because like he spent his entire Mercedes career, like yeah, he was a good teammate, but he spent his entire Mercedes career seething about how Lewis Hamilton was getting so much more press than him, how everyone cared about Lewis. Like he literally had he had an entire Drive to Survive episode about how he was going to stop Lewis from winning his 100th race so that he could like win a race over Lewis just to spite Lewis. Like that just seems like a very spiteful, angry person who doesn't really seem like he appreciates like the golden parachute that was handed to him, like being the Mercedes number two driver. Pretty much any top 10 driver could have put up the exact same numbers as he did in that car during that time span. Like, yeah, he was a great teammate, but like Lewis Hamilton was just kind of destroying everybody, as was Mercedes. So because of that, because of like that type of like animosity, like I just put him as my fourth most unlikable person. Now Lance Stroll, because I editorialized a little with Valtteri, I think I overcorrected a little bit with Lance Stroll. We're like, for him, like I actually like Lance, but people don't like him because of the whole Papa Stroll thing. But like for me, like you know, everybody in Formula One's a trust fund kid. Like literally everybody. Like you look at like Lando's dad is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Max's dad was a race car driver. Carlos's dad was a race car driver. Literally go down the line. Every single person either came from a whole lot of money or from racing themselves. So the fact that Lance comes from money, like I don't really care that much. I know his dad owns the team, but like he is kind of a good driver, like not great. Um, so now I'm gonna go to my top two. But before I do, I just want to do a little bit of a pitch. I'm trying to like make some more money off. I'm trying to start making money off of this YouTube channel. So I signed up for an Amazon affiliate program. I'm gonna put the link in my video. I I just chose an item. These are some shirts, like you know a bunch of shirts. Like you need shirts, so just like click on my link and buy some shirts. Get it delivered. Got 20% off. Some green shirts. Just wear some shirts around your house. So yeah, if you don't mind, I'd greatly appreciate if you guys could click that link in the bio so that I can start getting some money from these videos. Finally, number two of the most unlikable for me has got to be Pierre Gasly. One, I just don't like French people, so I'm just gonna put that out there. Like, I just don't like the French. But like, so Pierre Gasly gets into Red Bull, and everyone's rooting for him, right? And like, he does not perform well, like at all. Like he's just like tens of seconds off of Max. Like you literally have this whole Drive to Survive episode where Christian Horner keeps on giving him chance after chance after chance, keeps on telling him what he's got to do, and he just doesn't do it. He just doesn't perform over and over and over again. He just does not perform, right? And then he loses the seat. By the way, like it's like one of the most coveted seats in Formula One, right? Like it's not owed to you. And then he goes to back to Toro Rosso, and he just has this huge chip on his shoulder. And like I get like having a chip on his shoulder, I get that, but the way that he talked about it, he's just like the seat that was taken from me. It was so unfair the way that they treated me. They treated me so unfairly. It's like no, they didn't, bro. Like you did not perform. Like you did not put up the numbers that it needed you to put up on a daily basis. Like Christian Horner needs you to get 1 through 5, 1 through 6 every weekend so that they can challenge Mercedes for the constructors, and you just weren't getting it done. Like Checo Perez last year, he won. He was like him and Carlos Sainz were the only drivers not named Max Verstappen to win a race last year. I think between the two of them, they won like four, and Checo Perez was in the hot seat all year. Right, like that's just who Red Bull is. You should know that before you sign up for their academy. But he was just so angry and so spiteful, and like believed that it was unfair that this happened to him. When really, like, it was completely fair. And there was that one race where like it was like for like 10 laps straight, they were like, Pierre, make the move. Pierre, make the move. Pierre, make the move. He was like, I can't make the move. It's like you're a race car driver. Make the move. Do something. Anyway, so he goes back to Toro Rosso, and he actually like kind of has a little bit of a redemption arc, a little bit, right? Like he becomes like a mentor to Yuki. Like, you know, he wins at Monza. He becomes like cuddly Pierre Gasly, and then Otmar gives him the Alpine seat over Daniel Ricciardo, by the way. And what does he do? What does Pierre Gasly do? Within 10 races, he gets Otmar fired. Like, remember, the reason why Otmar got fired wasn't because there was something wrong with the car. And it wasn't because, like, when they were finishing poorly. It's because Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon kept on hitting against each other. Like, there was this giant character problem between Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon that was caused by those two drivers. And, like, I don't care if it's Esteban Ocon's fault, and I'm going to get to that. But, like, part of that is your responsibility. And you've got to, like, fix that. Because this guy brought you in. This guy gave you a seat. This guy gave you your first real drive, and you fired him. You got him fired because you just kept on fighting with Esteban Ocon. And now, guess what happens, Pierre? Guess what happened? Now that Otmar's gone, you have some French idiot running the team, and they made a piece of crap car. And now like you and Esteban Ocon might not score a single point this year because you got Otmar fired. And Otmar's a very capable team principal. Like, you know, Alpine did a good job last year before he got fired. Alpine finished fourth, I think, the year before that, and then he also like put up some great numbers at Racing Point as well. I think Checo one year was third in the drivers' championship. So Otmar's a great team principal. You got him fired, and now you have a terrible car. So that's on you. Anyway, Esteban Ocon. Oh yeah, by the way, shirts. He's my number one. So the funny thing about Esteban Ocon is when I started Drive to Survive, I thought Esteban Ocon would be the good guy. Like, I thought that, like, um, you know, like, he would be the guy that we're rooting for because this whole thing about he comes from poverty, yada yada yada. I mean, I looked into it. He's not as poor as he says he is, but he's poor in comparison to other people. But Esteban Ocon, like, literally everybody on the grid hates him. So, like, let's just look at some videos. So this is him and Max Verstappen. So if you don't remember what happened this race, basically Esteban Ocon was being lapped by Max Verstappen, and instead of like turning over to the side, he basically tried to pass Max Verstappen, and in the process they hit each other, and Max was going to win the race, and instead his car DNF'd. Like, that's who Esteban Ocon is. But again, you can say like, oh, okay, that's just Max. Like, you know, Max is a hothead. He's like too stubborn. Okay, like whatever. Checo Perez. Est- Esteban Ocon had a problem with Checo Perez as well. By the way, Checo Perez and Max Verstappen are now teammates. No problem between those two. Pierre Gasly. Those two guys hit each other also. And then also, like, Fernando Alonso apparently hates him too. He says, according to the two-time F1 champion, the Frenchman still hasn't matured and Alpine drivers pose a constant threat. As you can see, the Spaniard will not miss the opportunity to stab his former employer, so we just have to wait for Esteban's answer. Basically, everybody who has raced with this guy hates him. He's the most hateable person in F1. He's also French. He races for the French team, and also he got Otmar fired as well, and Otmar was like the best thing that ever happened to him. So yeah, those are my rankings. Just to like go over them quickly. Oh yeah, also like, subscribe, and comment. I'm not gonna show this whole thing, but number one, Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, Lance Stroll, Valtteri Bottas. Kind of nothing. Zhou Guanyu, Logan Sargent, Oscar Piastri, root for in theory. Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hulkenberg, Alexander Albon, Carly but mean. Yuki should be more unlikable but likable. George Russell, Fernando Alonso, starting to get likable. Max, Carlos, Lando Checo, loved Lewis, and then top Danny and Carlos. Let me know what you think, and yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much.